Hey, it's Eric G. Around the House is sponsored by Baldwin Hardware. For 75 years, Baldwin Hardware has been known for its first-class quality and craftsmanship in door and cabinetry hardware. As an alumnus of the Baldwin Hardware Design Council, I can say I have seen the details and quality from design to the finished product. If you're looking for a new style and old-world craftsmanship, I can tell you there is only one Baldwin Hardware. Check out what would look great in your home at baldwinhardware.com.
It's Around the House.
In this episode, we've got one of my favorite interviews we just did with my buddy Andrew Pace, green building expert, and this is going to be a lot of fun. But here's the thing, it can't all fit into the radio show because it was over an hour. So make sure you hit our premium membership over there where you can catch the whole thing commercial free and 10 days free for that. So head over to aroundthehouseonline.com and sign up there. This is an interview you don't want to miss, and we even talk whiskey. Around the House show is brought to you by Pyramid Heating and Cooling. Serving in Oregon, the Portland metro area, and Bend, Oregon, they are your one-stop shop for heating and cooling and indoor air quality. Head to pyramidheating.com. Oregon CCB 59382.
When it comes to remodeling and renovating your home, there is a lot to know, but we've got you covered. This is Around the House.
Welcome to the Around the House show, the next generation of home improvement. Brought to you, my friends, over at Monument Grills. To find out more, head to monumentgrills.com. And we have a fabulous show today. One of my good buddies, that every time he comes on here, we get off on sidetracks. We have a lot of fun talking about everything healthy home and maybe a little whiskey even, if we can slide that into the conversation. Andrew Pace, Andy Pace, my friend, welcome back to Around the House.
Thank you, Eric. I'll tell you what, I've been looking forward to this conversation since I found out about it again, because you and I always get into these great conversations, a little bit of some side tangents that are always enjoyable, but this is fantastic. Great to see you again.
Great to have you on here. It's been way too long. Let's talk about you for a minute for all the new people out there. You've got the Green Design Center. You are one of my probably two people that I reach out to when I'm like, okay, I got to figure a healthy solution out here. And usually get my emails or LinkedIn messages going, what do I do about this? And it's always something strange.
Yeah, that's actually my career has been made on answering those tough questions quickly. I work with people all around the world who have allergies, asthma, chemical sensitivities, mold sensitivities, pretty much anybody who has an immune system disorder that doesn't allow them to live in the current state of our home buildings. And so anything that could cause a reaction for somebody would be chemical off-gassing, mold, bacteria, you name it. So I help folks remodel, design, and build healthy homes.
And there are so many, I'm going to use this because it's politically incorrect and I don't care because that's my style, but there are so many old wives' tales out there of how to deal with things that are completely the wrong answers, only answer to do stuff. And it's shocking where people are like, oh, go do this. And it's like, what are you talking about making that worse like that?
It's funny you mentioned this right away, because the hot topic lately has been, if your house has a lot of chemicals coming from the building materials, what you should do is do what's called a bake out, where you heat up the house and that it excites all the chemicals and the materials, and it allows them to off gas faster. And I'll tell you, folks, that's the absolute worst thing you want to do in your house, because yes, you will get more chemical release, but you'll also get new chemical compounds being formed that wouldn't be there unless you heated it up to that temperature. Not to mention, this is only effective if you do this at 100 degrees for 2 weeks straight. And by that time, you have now voided every warranty for every building material you use. So
let's go down the list, right?
Exactly.
And the funny thing is maybe all of those plastics in your house that finally the oils on the outside have finally off-gassed and they're slowed down. You are hitting the Control Alt Delete restart on those as well, right? Common sense says that.
For sure. We know that a lot of building materials that are used, let's say materials that finish or cure on site, paints, stains, adhesives, caulking materials, those can off-gas anywhere from about 2.5 to 4.5 years after they reach a full cure. Other materials like plywood and plastics, the off-gassing never really is fully complete, but the majority of it will release within those first few years. If you now expose it to this new temperature that it's not supposed to be at, it can then start the process all over again. So yeah, I hear that all the time from customers. I think there was an article written about 25 years ago by a scientist named Hal Levin, wrote this article on how you can do a bake out, but then he came back out with an article right afterwards saying, but don't do it, because you can't do this effectively in a home without causing a whole host of problems. So don't even try.
I think the only thing you might do is kill some bed bugs, and that's probably
you
about
might
it.
do that. Yeah, it'll certainly increase your energy costs for a while. It's a bad idea.
Oh man, I'm thinking of the different systems in your house that are going to go sideways with that, and that's just not good. Not good at all. It's the same thing about on social media posts out there. People just going, oh yeah, just take that bleach and wipe down all the mold and you'll be good to go. And you can cover it right up and build right over the top of it. And I'm just like, I don't care what you're using, guys. Let's just put the bleach away. I don't really have a good cause for bleach to be used. There's so many better products out there, even if it's on a hard surface.
All right. I think that we get to the situation where because somebody does something for a living, they can call themselves an expert. I hear this all the time. Look, to your point, contractor says, oh yeah, just bleach the wood. It'll be fine. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never had a problem.
That's my favorite line.
My response always is, I've been golfing for 30 years and I'm still absolutely horrible. Just because you do something doesn't make you an expert at it. Just because somebody gives you money for something you do does not make you an expert. There are so many of these old, as you say, wives' tales, and that people just assume work. Otherwise, they wouldn't be still saying this. There are so many of these issues that keep on getting perpetuated, and these ideas, they do not work. They cause bigger problems. Bleach especially makes mold worse. So do never bleach mold.
Yeah. And what's bad is I think there's even some EPA documentation out there saying, oh, it works good on non-porous surfaces. But I'm like, why make it worse? Maybe it does kill some of it. There's, like I said, so many better products. And I just wish the government would take that page down because it's misinformation in my mind. It's
information in today's consumers. And this is not to rip on anybody in particular, but generally speaking, people skim information.
Yeah.
So you download this sheet on how to get rid of mold. Oh, it says I can use bleach. Okay, I can use bleach. It says you can use bleach on non-porous surfaces. No, you didn't read that next line.
Yeah.
And so I would rather err on the side of safe, and let's just not talk about it at all. Let's talk about what works in everything, and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. And there's so many good preventative measures out there, stuff that you got me lined up with out there in the past with stuff is okay. You got the problem fixed, but you're still going to coat something over the top of it. Right. Don't run down and get the hardware store primer that says it's good for mold. Go get something like Callowell or something. And I got that from you.
Yes. Yeah. And that the Callowell product has been an absolute lifesaver. The true method of remediating a mold situation, without going down into a deep rabbit hole here, but the true method is they open up the wall, they do containment, they open up the walls, you're vacuuming, you're scraping, you're sanding, you're cleaning. Then when it's dry, you encapsulate, you put a coating on so that this situation can happen again. Callowell is a little bit different. Callowell, after you encapsulate and you vacuum to get rid of the loose material, you literally paint 2 coats over the moldy wood, and that's it. You're done. It saves 75% of the labor. And the way it does it's not by using some toxic scientific noxious chemical. It uses lime. It uses calcium hydroxide, natural mineral, and it raises the pH of the surface so high that it kills mold on contact and it stays active for a minimum of 5 years, which is unlike anything on the market.
Yeah. pH is science. And when it gets to that point where it's going to nothing's going to grow on it, you've created something without off-gassing and sending in your healthy air off into the stratosphere with bad contaminants.
And we've literally have hundreds and hundreds of years of experience using lime. Farmers use lime wash the barns to get rid of the mold. Villages throughout Europe since the plague have been using lime on their homes to essentially stop the spread of disease. Yeah. So we know it works. So that another old wives' tale, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I believe that one. This works. It's a natural material that works. Let's just stick with that.
It's basic science. Let's go ahead and use it. It's something we learned in 5th grade. Exactly. And it works. It's so smart. And I think topically, because we've had it's not been a bad hurricane season for most, but we've had a lot of storms on the East Coast and across the South that have been really hitting people that maybe have been in homes for 5 years that have never had to deal with water intrusion issues, whether it's in a first floor, a crawl space, or a basement. And these are some really good tried and true ways to deal with it. Don't change that dial. Around the House, we'll be right back with more from expert Andrew Pace. We're talking healthy homes. Guys, it's Eric G from Around the House Show. I wanted to introduce you to one of our new sponsors. Monument Grills was founded by 3 good friends in Atlanta, Georgia that wanted high-quality, durable grills inspired by iconic monuments. The grills are created for the person who loves to cook and are built to last and to enhance your outdoor cooking experience. What I love is that they are the best quality grills for under $900. So check out the American Gas Grill experts at monumentgrills.com. I bet you'll love to cook on one like I do. Check out the new standard in outdoor cooking at monumentgrills.com. All I can say is you're really missing out. You're missing out on cool conversations like this that don't make it into the podcast or the radio show.
And one of them is always a really inexpensive bourbon up against, a poor man's Pappy, a Weller 12.
Yeah. Still it's great.
Every single time I've done this, everybody's always chosen the cheap bourbon.
It's the caramelness, it's the taste, it's just easy drinking, right?
Yeah, and so the one that always scores the highest is Jim Beam Black. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is amazing. And it's $20 a bottle?
Check it out because you get a 10-day free trial. Just make sure you sign up on the details below in the podcast player. That way you get to hear the entire conversation. That's how you find out more information, and you get to have a good time at the end of the show. I'm Eric G, and thanks for tuning in to Around the House. You just got to stop missing out. Welcome back to the Around the House Show, the next generation of home improvement, brought to you by our friends over at Monument Grills. If you're looking for a new grill, check them out at monumentgrills.com. Now, we're going to talk with Andrew Pace here. Now, this whole interview did not fit into the radio show or podcast, so make sure and hit our premium episode so you can grab it over there. First 10 days are free. Now, let's get back to talking with Andrew. Because so many people, I see it on social media. Hey, I had 18 inches of water in my basement and it's finished, so I'm going to take the drywall out and put new drywall on. Am I good? And it's just like, you're not dealing with this correctly. And it's one of the things that we see here in the Pacific Northwest because we have a lot of basements and crawl spaces. House flippers go in and take an unfinished basement that's been unfinished for 30 years because of water intrusion issues. And they go in there and say, cool, let's go add another 1,000 square feet to the house. They finish it off incorrectly. And people move in and 8 to 10 weeks are going, why am I coughing? Why am I not feeling well?
Right.
And then you go down and start peeling back some drywall and see, wow, white on this side, black on this side. And it starts to get to be a hot mess.
It comes down to that we just talked about before. This is the way we've always done it. So let's just continue to do it this way and everything will be just fine. Whichever side of the coin somebody is on about the climate, the fact of the matter is, we realize that weather patterns are changing, and then areas of the country that used to get a lot of rain may get less, may get more. And this is cyclical as well. We see this every 10 to 15 years. I know here in my state, here in Wisconsin, about every 10 to 15 years, we get these summers of absolute torrential rainfalls. And then a summer like now, which we haven't had rain for 2 weeks. This is what happens, but it's always safe to err on the side of let's protect from the moisture, because at some point in the 100-year existence of this home, moisture is going to be an issue. So why wouldn't you protect against it?
Yeah, so simple. And the science is out there. The materials are out there to do this correctly. And right. I just like to see people doing it right, because depending on the location, as there are some crazy rules for basements and stuff across the country. What is that in Colorado where they get frost heave and they've got to have an adjustable floor by 6 inches there's a lot of weird things that happen that all of our friends down in Florida and California are going, what are you talking about?
Right.
But really, there's not one rule that fits everything, but there is one rule for controlling moisture, making sure that is a dry space down there and not growing mold.
And then you throw into this whole equation the fact that in every state, you have a different set of building codes, energy codes. You bring up Boulder, Colorado. I'm working with a customer in Boulder right now, a large contractor. And the things he has to do just to meet the energy codes, literally causing health issues for his customers.
Yeah.
Because there's the unintended consequence of trying to do the right thing. And this is what we're in right now, in the middle of. Code officials around the country trying to make our homes more energy efficient. I understand that. Everybody loves energy efficiency. Our bottom line, our wallets love energy efficiency. However, if it's happening in a way that's making the occupants less healthy, let's reevaluate what we're doing. And so why would we use spray foam throughout the entire house if we know spray foam is problematic for a majority of people who have asthma and then others who just don't like chemical off-gassing? And so let's look at these things and say what makes sense, not for necessarily just the environment, but for us who live within the environment. Yes. We should be working this together.
Yeah, it's almost backwards right now. It's like the energy efficiency right now is graded higher on the scale of building officials than the health of the human living inside the house by like 4-1. And then people like you have to go back and go, okay, we have this mess that was created. That was building code was followed in this construction process, but how do we go back in and get fresh air? How do we get this stuff cleaned up? How do we make this happen? And that's a tough battle.
It's 100% avoidable. Yep. And when you ask the code officials if we can do something different because we're dealing with health of the occupant issues, they'll say, yep, sorry, it won't meet the code. So there are builders now that I work with around the country, and I won't name names, but they're looking at this. They're saying, we're going to submit based upon the codes, but we're going to build what we know works and what we know was healthier. And you gotta be careful with that because you certainly don't want them to cheapen up the process to pad their own pockets. But they're the ones who have to deal with the angry homeowner when they come back and say, listen, everybody in the house is getting sick. We're not getting enough fresh air. The material that are supposedly eco-friendly are all off-gassing toxins. And then now it's the builder's fault. Why did you put us in this situation? So the builders are trying to nip that in the bud and say, here's a better way to do things. Most importantly, I want to give you a home that is aesthetically pleasing, meets the budget. It's going to last a very, very long time and is healthy for you and your family.
Yeah, amen. And that's one of those things. And it's one thing that whenever I've been teaching seminars as far as home tech and healthy home stuff that I do, and I haven't done as many over the last years because I've been doing the media thing like this, but I always brought up a thing when you're dealing with contractors and you're building new homes, you should be doing air testing before and after, before you hand it over to your consumer, to that end customer, so they know where you left it. So there's a baseline. And quite frankly, if you start seeing some bad air results, you go, oh, what product is causing this? Because when Mrs. Smith comes in with her, cheap Wayfair couch or whatever that came from wherever that's all filled up and off gassing for the next 2 years,
right?
It's not on you, it's on them. And you can help, you have at least a baseline to protect yourself, at least when the house was handed over.
It's one of those things where some of the builders we work with will say, if what we don't know can't hurt us, and the more you want to know, the more you need to know, and then it opens up a whole Pandora's box of issues. Sometimes it does, but I'll tell you, if there was a way, and there is a way, using different methods of air testing to actually do it at certain steps of the construction process to say, at this point we're good to go. From this point back, everything that we've done is good. And now we know between this checkpoint and this checkpoint, something has caused this massive raise in the VOC levels in the house or the formaldehyde levels. We can then look back through the construction schedule and the materials to say it must have been one of these 2 or 3 things. And then those are obviously things we'll avoid on the next job, of course. But I've been involved in houses throughout the country where I get brought in to somewhat remediate the chemical issues in the home. And we'll look at these air tests. A house that's just been completed before the family moves in is testing out between 7,000 and 15,000 grams per liter of VOCs.
Wow.
And these are supposedly homes that are built to green built standards.
Oh.
So people say, how can that be? Understand that all these green built standards are predicated on the EPA requirements for VOCs.
Mm-hmm.
VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, are chemicals that can contribute to outdoor air pollution. This is the definition of what a VOC is.
Yeah.
Inside of a home, there's not enough nitrogen and UV to create low-level smog. So you look at VOCs and say, some are dangerous. Yes, some are dangerous for humans. A lot of them are completely harmless. But if you use materials that might be considered zero VOC to meet the regulations, it doesn't mean that there's zero toxin. There are over 92,000 chemicals used in the production of building materials and home goods. Out of that, a couple thousand of them are considered VOCs. The rest of them are either not regulated as VOCs because they don't contribute to outdoor air pollution, or they're not volatile organic compounds at all. They're other things. And so I don't understand why do we strive to do low VOC when if I peel the skin off of an orange for breakfast, I've just released 850 grams per liter of VOCs.
Don't change that dial. More with Andrew Pace as soon as Around the House returns. Don't go anywhere. Hey, it's Eric G from Around the House. Are you tired of low-quality water in your home? Do you have bad-tasting water? How about chemicals, minerals, and a hard water scale tearing up your bathrooms, appliances, and your water heater? I have a great solution for you. It's time you stop the damage and check out King Water Filtration. This water treatment system takes care of every drop of water that comes into your home. It uses no salt, no expense filters to change, and it's made right here in the USA. Plus, it prevents hard water scale. To find out more information, head to kingwaterfiltration.com, and if you use promo code ERIC-23, it will give you $1,000 off MSRP with a discount on a filter that will resolve those water quality issues. Don't miss out on this amazing sale on a product made right here in the USA at kingwaterfiltration.com. That's kingwaterfiltration.com. And don't forget promo code ERIC-23. All I can say is you're really missing out. You're missing out on cool conversations like this that don't make it into the podcast or the radio show.
And one of them is always a really inexpensive bourbon up against, a poor man's Pappy, a Weller 12.
Yeah. Still it's great.
Every single time I've done this, everybody's always chosen the cheap bourbon.
It's the caramelness, it's the taste, it's just easy drinking, right?
Yeah, and so the one that always scores the highest is Jim Beam Black. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is amazing. It's $20 a bottle?
Check it out because you get a 10-day free trial. Just make sure you sign up on the details below in the podcast player. That way you get to hear the entire conversation. That's how you find out more information, and you get to have a good time at the end of the show. I'm Eric G, and thanks for tuning in to Around the House. You just got to stop missing out. Welcome back to the Around the House show, the next generation of home improvement, brought to you by our friends over at Monument Grills. If you're looking for a new grill, check them out at monumentgrills.com. Now, we're going to talk with Andrew Pace here. Now, this whole interview did not fit into the radio show or podcast, so make sure and hit our premium episode so you can grab it over there. First 10 days are free. Now, let's get back to talking with Andrew.
Why do we strive to do low VOC when if I peel the skin off of an orange for breakfast, I've just released 850 grams per liter of VOCs. It's not going to poison me. It's not going to hurt me.
Yeah.
It's nourishment.
Yeah.
So we need to stop chasing these numbers and actually look at the details, how these materials are made, how our houses are built. So we're not relying on some esoteric score to tell us thumbs up or thumb down.
Yeah. I was doing some research the other day and I saw that there are 11, I think it's current. It's within a year or so current, which is always hard when you're doing research, but it looks like there's 11 states in the US that don't have statewide building codes. And so they're more city or county or township or whatever. And that's part of the problem too. Like I got a buddy having a house built down outside of Phoenix, Arizona. And I've been watching this thing get built, and I've been because he lives up in the Pacific Northwest up my way. And I'm watching this thing get built and I'm like, are you kidding me? We couldn't do that. So great example. The house has been open air outside in Phoenix. And for the last 4 weeks, they've had this crazy windstorms and stuff that's been going on down there. There's no windows or doors in it, but they've already got the drywall and it's textured but not primed. It's just been sitting there soaking in whatever.
Yeah. Oh boy, that's scary. And I know people say, yeah, but Arizona, it's a dry climate. Folks, mold exists everywhere. It doesn't have to be just in the Pacific Northwest or in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
Mold is everywhere. And so once it gets onto a surface like plaster or an acrylic-based texture or what have you, that becomes a food source. And eventually that mold will come back, and it'll come back very, very strongly. It's interesting because, there are a lot of locations that don't have building codes. And then there's the other, on the flip side of the coin, there's a lot of locations that have building codes, but they don't have code officials to actually enforce them.
Right.
So it's like, what good is having them? And we all know building code is basically the bare minimum.
Absolutely.
That's what you need to hit just to get your permit and to make sure you can get a certificate of occupancy that you built to those standards. It's the bare minimum. And if there's nobody there to actually do any inspections, then why even have them?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I've been working on a few projects around here. I'm not going to say what part of the state where it's at. And I did helping out some friends and my brother and knocking stuff out. And inspector walks in and goes, looks around, looks good, and heads out. And I'm like, you didn't even walk in the room that I went, I'm following the rule of the law. And that's the thing with building codes, right? You're like, on section this, it says this, but 4 paragraphs later, in my instance, it actually goes against that. So you have 2 rules. Which one are you going to use? And this is International Building Code. And it's like absolute insanity. So it's hard to navigate, but we had to literally ask 5 or 6 questions because we're pulled all the right permits on this. And the building department had to come back and say, let me get with the rest of the people in the office because I don't actually know that answer.
So you are probably one of the few people who wants to ask those questions because you want to know for sure. There's a lot of the people in the industry would not want to ask the question because it's like calling the IRS and asking them about your taxes. I don't want to open up that Pandora's box. And so if it's not mentioned, if it's not notated, I guess we're good. Move on.
Yeah. These are all just conflicts within code where you're like, that says that, but that says the other thing. Which one is it?
Yeah. Yeah. And then look at an existing home, and you're going to be buying an existing home and hiring a home inspector. I've had 2 situations now just in the last couple of weeks where people have come to me saying, we hired a home inspector when we bought this monumental dream home. And within a year of moving in, everybody got sick. I have one in particular where her kids developed these very rare neurological issues because of mold exposure. And it's all because the inspection never dug deep enough to figure out if there's a mold problem. In a place like the Carolinas, where mold is prevalent, but also their building methods absolutely stink. And sorry to my South Carolina friends, you need things like vapor control barriers, people. Just because you don't do it doesn't mean it's the right thing.
Yeah.
So in any event, I think that we could avoid all of this if we just had a way to educate the professionals themselves so they know what to look for.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a great call because it's crazy. Like, great example out at a project I've been working with my brother out on the Oregon coast out here. Building code said, okay, it's an old 50s house. We went through and we removed most of the material that was moldy because it had literally had water leaks for 20 years inside of it. It was known as the blue tarp house in there. And so we went through and probably reframed 50% of that just to start over in that. But going through it, when we put stuff back in, we did vapor barriers in the right spot. We put in a rock wool insulation in the walls when we reinsulated just to do stuff that was going to be as durable as we could moving forward. We used 5/8 drywall inside instead of 1/2 inch.
Nice.
Here's the thing, and this is one of the things that I've noticed with new drywall, for instance, and this is the light drywall that we're seeing. If you talk to firefighters and people that are out there testing this stuff, this new lightweight drywall drops down in a fire about 10 minutes earlier than it ever did because they've aerated the drywall mixture so the screws don't hold. So technically the fire departments are saying, hey, when you're putting up drywall on a ceiling, you should either be using glues and adhesive or twice the amount of screws.
Wow.
Just to keep the ceiling up there.
So, and this is the problem that exists. how does that information get disseminated to the trades and then make it into on a set of plans and have to be dealt with by the code officials? Because we also see the same thing with TJI joists, and firefighters will tell you, I don't want to enter a home that's fully engulfed if we know it's TJI because it's going to collapse.
Same with trusses. Trusses where you have the metal plates, 5 minutes of flame contact on those plates and they go curl.
Yeah.
And then you've got all these sticks there. And you see these now in new construction where they actually built those truss joists for floor systems. And I've talked to a few firefighters here on this show where they walked into a room, and they could see that the carpet was holding up and it was the tack strip that had still held on the outside, but the center had floored. So they were basically going to walk into a room that was a trampoline, that the tack strip was still holding the carpet, but that had actually fallen in.
Wow.
And so, and the crazy thing is, and again, this comes down to building code, that if those truss manufacturers put 2 screws in those joints, holding them together, you wouldn't have that issue. It would still hold together during that time. But that would be such a simple code thing, and take a truss manufacturer an extra 2 minutes of truss and put those in there, but it just doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen. And this always makes me think about the way homes used to be built, right? With full cut dimensional lumber.
Yeah.
And why some of these homes still exist today is because of how well they were built with such good materials. Yeah, they had to deal with lead and asbestos and so forth. And we know how to deal with that now.
Yep.
The methods of how they did things and the materials that they used last so much longer than what we have now.
I think part of it was the homes were insulated. They could breathe. They could dry out. We weren't trapping everything in. I think that's where we started to go sideways. If I was going to make a guess on this, and I'm not a scientist by any means, but it seems like as soon as we started throwing up tar paper in places and plastic on the inside, and before we put the drywall up and started making all these mold sandwiches, trying to be more efficient, that's when these house things tended to go sideways.
Yeah. And so when I give presentations on this subject, I always talk about how the industry really changed vastly in the early 70s with the OPEC oil embargo. And it caused commercial buildings and residential builders to start tightening up spaces to save energy, because energy costs were so high in the early 70s. In the 80s, we had that mentality of keeping things nice and tight, but then was the explosion in synthetics and plastics.
Yep. And
so through the 80s, so side note, if you're going to be buying an existing home, I would avoid homes built in the 80s.
Yeah.
That's a general thought.
Yeah.
There are exceptions, but that's generally speaking.
Don't change that dial. Around the House, we'll be right back with more from expert Andrew Pace. We're talking healthy homes. Hey guys, it's Eric G, and I have a special offer for you. Do you want to get the podcast a couple days early? How about extended content that isn't in the typical podcast? Maybe you want to check out all the back episodes of the show. And I got a special deal for the first 10 days are free. I want to personally invite you to be an Around the House insider. For about $4 a month, you can get exclusive extended episodes, early access to the weekend show, and exclusive access to me, Eric G, for project questions or comments. Check on the link on your podcast player in the show notes, or head to aroundthehouseonline.com and look for the join here button. Make sure and sign up today. As always, thanks for tuning in to Around the House. Hey, it's Eric G from Around the House. If you're enjoying the Around the House show, make sure and hit that subscribe button on the podcast player you're listening to right now. To find out more about Around the House show, head to aroundthehouseonline.com. And of course, thanks for listening to Around the House. Welcome back to the Around the House show, the next generation of home improvement, brought to you by our friends over at Monument Grills. If you're looking for a new grill, check them out at monumentgrills.com. Now, we're going to talk with Andrew Pace here. Now, this whole interview did not fit into the radio show or podcast, so make sure and hit our premium episode so you can grab it over there. First 10 days are free. Now, let's get back to talking with Andrew.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of adhesive used to when they apply this back or push this back together again after shredding it, that there's much more of a chance, especially of the edges, of moisture getting in and swelling, and then it turns into a structural issue. It turns into a mold issue. And then you use a CDX plywood in lieu of that, and that eliminates a lot of that problem, but then it's double the cost.
Yeah.
And so then I look at it and say something like a zip wall system, which has that WRB built in, that green coating that's built in, which if that's done correctly with the tapes and so forth, is probably double the cost of OSB as well.
Yeah.
But in any of these situations, this is just one part of the entire system. It's one component. So
it's one cup of water in the lake, right?
Right, exactly. And so what you do on the outside of that, on the inside of that, this is where it makes a difference. If you have an air gap or a rain screen between the sheathing and your siding, that's going to eliminate 95 to 99% of the moisture wicking from condensation and wind-driven rain.
So then it doesn't matter what you have back there in the sense
Correct.
of water damage, because you've now stopped it and you've given a path for the water to go.
Exactly. And then also keep in mind then from a chemical standpoint, whether it's OSB or plywood, they still have to use adhesives to push them all together, to glue it together. These adhesives that are being used now for moisture resistance, exterior grade use are not urea formaldehyde based. Urea formaldehyde based adhesives can only be used interior because they're not moisture resistant. For moisture resistant OSB and plywood, they use what's called phenol formaldehyde or phenolic resin. And this resin is about 200 times less likely to ever become airborne. Matter of fact, in the 30 years in this business and testing materials, I have never had a phenolic resin-based panel ever off-gas formaldehyde.
Nice.
So I recommend it all the time.
Yeah. So great example. I just made for my Around the House Northwest TV show, I just made for my outdoor kitchen, I made countertops out of paper stone.
Nice.
I
Love that stuff.
It's awesome.
It's great. And that's the original phenolic-based panel materials. This is, if you remember, if those of us who are old enough remember Bakelite from way back in the day, Bakelite used for handles for pots. And then like this, what's on top of the electrical poles, the wires wrapped around. Yep. Yeah. So basically it's layers of paper soaked in a phenolic resin. And this is what is done now for Paper Stone and Richlight and all these other companies that make wonderful products.
Yeah.
It's completely inert. It's incredibly dense, very durable. You can cut directly on it. And while you might scratch the surface a bit, that can be renewed, no big deal.
Yep.
But it won't dull your expensive knives.
Yeah.
So it's a great product.
And I can use it outside. It's heat rated. So I can use it up to, I think it's heat rated up to like 375 degrees. So if I put it next to a barbecue or next to my outdoor pizza oven, I'm not ruining it. It's just so good. And I can cut it like wood. So I don't have to have a fabricator do it, which I think is the other part. And the thing I liked about Paper Stone is the stuff I got was FSC certified. So it's clean.
It's clean. And I've used that material for exterior cladding in commercial buildings. It's unbelievable. I got a piece outside my office window that is a cutoff from one of our jobs. It's been there for, I think, 12 years. In the rain, in the snow. I'm in Wisconsin. It's 20 below zero in the winter and 100 in the summer. It hasn't changed at all.
Yeah. And if you want it to look really good, throw some of that spray wax on it. Spray wax on it. And man, it looks like it's brand new day one again.
Exactly. Yeah. Beautiful material.
Yeah. It's great. It's great. So what do you think now? Here's my question for you. How do we deal with this today? And we're getting so much new information as far as healthy air inside our homes. I think people woke up about indoor air quality a little bit when they were home during the COVID years here, and people started paying attention. But it seems to be a little bit of the Wild West. I put an air scrubber in my house. I'm not going to say the brand name because I'm going to say something bad about it. But what I don't like about it is when my wife is going to go bake, I have to go turn it off and unplug it because it will actually kill the yeast and her dough will not rise.
That's wild.
So I'm like, wait a minute. And it's one of the hydroxyl type systems, right?
Sure.
But I'm like, health-wise for me, I'm like, wait a minute. How healthy is that for me if that yeast that's sitting there in a bowl on the countertop we just did won't rise? And if I take it outside right away and put it outside on the outdoor kitchen counter and it's the same temp, it does great.
Again, this is like the unintended consequence of trying to do the right thing. We're trying to make our indoor air quality cleaner, but there's very few ways right now that we can filter what we want to filter. It's like an RO system for water, right?
Yeah.
And a reverse osmosis system for water takes everything out of the water.
Yeah.
It doesn't just take the bad stuff, but it takes the good stuff out too.
Yeah.
And I think like these hydroxyl type cleaning systems, they sanitize so well that it sanitizes out the good yeast.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I think that this is where having a good, healthy home consultant in the project to ask those questions, it's like having a good interior designer.
Yeah.
To me, I love working with really good interior designers because they ask the questions that an architect won't answer or ask, or a contractor doesn't necessarily ask. They ask, how do you live in your house?
Yeah.
So if you told me we like to bake bread, okay, I can't use an air purification system that's going to kill off all the good yeast as well. So yeah, but we're learning this as we go. And you're right. Because of COVID, healthy home topics are now top of mind.
Yeah.
I think that it was a big awakening. Our homes can be the cause of a lot of our problems, not COVID, but all these other things that are happening. That, and also in the last 5 to 10 years, there has been so much research coming out about genetics and about how there's about 25% of the population that has the genetic predisposition to have mold sensitivity. And mold sensitivity is what leads to chemical sensitivity and electromagnetic sensitivities. This is all just coming out in the last few years. I think we're on the tip of the iceberg.
Absolutely. I can walk into a house, and being an interior designer, kitchen and bath designer for 30 years, I could walk into a house because of my mold allergies. I can walk in and go, where's your mold problem?
Yeah.
I am like the canary in the coal mine. I can walk in and go, you got a problem in here. Let's not talk about the kitchen. What's rotting? What are you talking about? I'm like, I smell mold. Where is it?
You're the human mold dog, right?
Yeah. I can get it in 5 seconds. Literally. I just do that. And so when I was out looking at homes to buy, it's bad. I can walk in and go, nope, don't want to deal with it. Don't like the house that well to even go farther. We're out. And then, what do you mean?
So it's interesting. You probably are then in that 25% where you have mold sensitivity, but you probably also have a very good immune system where it doesn't necessarily affect you quickly.
Yeah, but I'm noticing more. Great example. And this is something, sawdust. If I'm out cutting hem fir lumber all day, working on a project, and I get it all around my collar and stuff, my neck is all red from broken out.
Sure.
So I'm noticing different sensitivities now at age 53 that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
Because I'm exposed myself to that enough, right? So
that's it. And somebody becomes sensitive to these things usually by long-term exposure, little small exposure, but long-term, or it's a massive exposure. You walk into a house where they just sprayed pesticides, or you've been exposed to something at work, or whatever the case was, even something like a massive health issue, like major surgery or a car accident or childbirth. It can change the body chemistry. So these things can actually change how your immune system responds. And so, I'm at 53 myself. I'm finding that I am now sensitive to things that I never thought would be a problem. And I'm in this business. I'm surrounded by healthy materials all the time. And maybe that's one of the reasons why, because I'm not inundating myself with the garbage all the time, that when I do come in contact with the real lousy materials, it instantly hits me.
How do people track you down? Because the green building is such a thing that should be a normal thing out there. And for people remodeling, there are people that are building homes, they need to know how to track you down for this kind of stuff, because you're such an amazing resource nationwide for people.
Oh, thank you. Best way to find me is our website, thegreendesigncenter.com. From that, you'll find links to not only the products that I've curated over the years to be the healthiest of the healthy, but also links to consulting, I do a podcast called Non-Toxic Environments, slowly trying to figure out YouTube and get videos up on YouTube. So that's linked on there. And then I also have a private, what's called a circle community, which is made up of customers and clients that are truly trying to find answers to, how do I make this aspect of my home healthier? What do I do in this situation? It's not like social media where somebody can come on and basically blast you for whatever opinion you have. This is actually people helping people. And I absolutely love it. I do that as a free service for all my followers.
Nice, man. I appreciate it. Buddy, thanks for taking the time today, man. It's been way too long, and we'll have to do this again soon, because I think we just scratched the surface on this today.
Exactly. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it, Eric.
All right, guys. Go back and make sure you listen to this one again, because there's a lot of information here for you. I'm Eric G, and you've been listening to Around the House. That was a fast hour.
Good work. That was fun.
I can say is you're really missing out. You're missing out on cool conversations like this that don't make it into the podcast or the radio show.
And one of them is always a really inexpensive bourbon up against, a poor man's Pappy, a Weller 12.
Yeah. Still it's great.
Every single time I've done this, everybody's always chosen the cheap bourbon.
It's the caramelness. It's the taste. It's just easy drinking, right?
Yeah. And so the one that always scores the highest is Jim Beam Black. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which is amazing. And it's $20 a bottle?
Check it out because you get a 10-day free trial. Just make sure you sign up on the details below in the podcast player. That way you get to hear the entire conversation. That's how you find out more information, and you get to have a good time at the end of the show. I'm Eric G., and thanks for tuning in to Around the House. You just got to stop missing out.